welcome to West Country Wanderings. Today we're on day 7, or vlog number 7 of the Cotswold Way, and we've got an exciting day today. You're not going to want to miss this one, so don't fast forward. We have got Long Barrows for you, we have got manor houses, we have got a stunning Cotswold town, and we've even got thrown in a castle for you. So why not join me and follow me along the fabulous Cotswold Way and see what we discover today. Back on the edge of Cleeve Common, we've still got the old golfers around us, like we left when we was on the top of the hill by the trig point. And yeah, we're heading down lower slopes now in the direction of beautiful town of Winchcombe, which we'll explore in more detail. We also will be looking at a Long Barrow, which is the next thing on the route, so we'll be looking out for that. Today's conditions, it's out of grey this morning. It is dry. I think it's about 19 degrees at the moment. Probably be breaks of sun later on as we come through the afternoon, and hopefully that it'll brighten up and warm up a little bit. It is threatening rain at the moment, but yeah, I'm prepared. If it gets wet, it gets wet. It's only water, but I might have to use the camera, of course. Have to put that away, but yeah, it's nice conditions here, nice open. I love being out on the common here. It's a fabulous spot, really good. The gate that we're approaching now means that we'll be leaving Cleeve Common shortly, which has been so much part of the journey on the Cotswold Way for the past 2 days. Where once we get through the gate, we'll be heading down through some woodland later on, and say we'll be coming up to Belas, Knap, Long Barrow. It's also passing a manor house, which I'll explain more about as we go through that. Just want to tell you a little bit about some of the many interesting things about Winchcombe though before I do that. And yeah, there is so much history in Winchcombe, and I'm not going to bore you with all of the details about it, but I'll bring out some snippets, some of it which is from Richard Sale's book, of course. And one of the things I found out was that it has links to the tobacco industry. Not now, I hasten to say, but before tobacco became a big thing in the colonies, there were huge tobacco plantations around Winchcombe, and when I found that out, I found that an absolutely amazing fact. And I believe there's actually a close or a cul-de-sac in Winchcombe. Sorry, just got to undo this gate. We're just here. I'll do it that way. That's a tricksy one. Yeah, as I was saying, there is a cul-de-sac in the domestic part of Winchcombe, which is called Tobacco Close. And the reason that those tobacco plantations aren't here now isn't anything to do with health factors. And I understand that the soil and the climate is actually very well suited for growing tobacco around Winchcombe. I'm not quite sure the detail on that, what it is particularly in the soil that makes it very fertile for the tobacco plants. But the reason it was curtailed, in fact, it came to halt. It was a very profitable industry for Winchcombe, I believe in the 16th century. And the reason it came to an end is because tobacco became a very important crop for the colonies, for our imports from our plantations abroad. And there was a confrontation between the growers abroad in our colonies and the growers here in England, and the government clamped down on the growth here in England. In actual fact, they set fire to the tobacco plantations, and it caused riots in the town of Winchcombe because it was an important part of their economy. And yeah, it came to an end, and sadly or not, it means that obviously tobacco is now no longer grown in these parts. But if it wasn't for tax and economy, it's potentially it could still be. Beautiful hedgerows here, and we've also still got the wild parsley out, cow parsley, umbilica family. I love that shape, the fantastic shape. Looks like an upturned umbrella. Really, really pleasing. Architecturally, it's like an architecture's plant. I'm not sure if I'm saying the architecture, if geometrically that people are doing designing buildings have ever designed one based on the old cow parsley. Not sure, but I would certainly like it. It would be a lot better than a lot of the architecture that's in place at the moment, I think. As we leave Cleeve Common, we get a nice sweep back of where we've come from. Just be able to make out the transmitters, which I took a photograph of last time when we were up there. So they're just on the top there, and that's a dry valley. That would lead up to where we were coming across towards Happy Valley and the Butterfly Nature Reserve. So thinking about things geometrically, I watch quite a bit of stuff on YouTube to do with history, also to do with photography. Obviously I'm on YouTube as well, and my interest lies not just in taking videos, but more specifically in taking photographs. And I was watching a video last night. A gentleman's name is I forgot his YouTube channel. I'll drop that in on a subtitle. And he's a Danish photographer, though he's based in Copenhagen. He does some work in Mexico, and the reason I mention him is that I was thinking about geometric designs and lines, the rule of thirds and all that type of thing, and if you're a photographer you'll be familiar with those terms. And he basically has done a whole series of different videos exploring the photographs of photographers, famous photographers, and one of my favourite photographers is Henri Cartier-Bresson, and one of my favourite images of his is of a lad, you might be familiar with this, in Paris, taking 2 bottles of pop. Well, I'm not sure whether he bought the 2 bottles of pop from the shop or was returning the empty bottles, but it's a fantastic image with the other children in the background. Street photography. I didn't realise that Henri Cartier-Bresson always used a fixed lens, a standard lens, 50mm. On my equivalent it would be 35mm focal length, and he always used a set shutter speed. I believe it was 1/125th of a second, and he always used Ilford film, and also never cropped his photograph, apart from on one occasion, I believe. If you're a photographer and also to do with the video editing, you'll be familiar with cropping, taking out unwanted parts of the image, perhaps focusing in on the main item of the image to improve impact. But apparently he never did any of that. He never cropped any of his images, and he said that cropping the image should take place in the viewfinder when you actually press the shutter button. And I go along with that to some extent. When I do take photographs, I do some cropping, and I might tweak the contrast and sharpness, that sort of thing, slightly. I don't do much more than that. I don't use Adobe. There's obviously different Adobe softwares you can use, Darkroom, that sort of thing. I don't really go in for that so much. I prefer to take the image as it looks. So I might give it a couple of tweaks, but I don't go into. In fact, I don't actually shoot. And some people will be horrified listening to this. I don't actually take photographs using RAW. I still just use JPEG. I know with RAW it gives you a lot more ability to tweak the image, and that's not something that I actually do. Curious to have all of these brown leaves behind me. We haven't actually got to autumn left, so I'm just curious. If you just see behind me there, just wondering if they've been left there from last autumn. Must be a sheltered spot, I suppose, because it's up against the wall. But yeah, I was find that a bit strange. Yeah, that little piece of film there was trying to identify what that was. There are a couple of Roman villas in this area, and one of them has a mosaic. And I'm not sure if that was, I can't remember the name, I'll drop the subtitle in, one of the ones that has a mosaic. I couldn't see, there was very poor lighting, and I couldn't really get access to my flash, so I will investigate that some further and drop some more information in. If I can find any more, I'll add it on later on in the vlog. The town of Winchcombe is just nestled behind me there in the gap in the valley. We've still got, however, some climbing to do, because, yep, you guessed it, the Cotswold Way, it never does a straight line, and it always takes you around probably most awkward way, but in doing that, it highlights the nature of the landscape, the nature of the geology, and the whole feel of the Cotswolds. You can actually drive from Winchcombe to the top of Cleeve Hill in probably about 8 minutes or so. But that won't tell you anything about the landscape here. You won't get the views that we've had coming through this way, and it won't tell you anything about the feel of the Cotswolds, what we have here. And I can just see something spectacular we're just coming up to now, and you would miss all of this. And it just goes to really underline and demonstrate why walking is 1,000 times better than travelling any other method if you want to get a feel for the nature of the landscape, get a feel to how people used to live, feel for the countryside, to explore and immerse yourself in nature. There is no beating it, there really isn't. Outside Postlip Manor House, or Postlip Hall at the moment, got this terrific spring behind me. Just see that there? Yeah, there it is. It's like a brick-built tunnel that goes around the spring as it comes out of the ground here. Just beautiful, just really, really beautiful piece of brickwork. Little confession to make. I made a slight bit on the directions. I've gone off route, though it's one of those happenstance things, and it was very pleasant. That's better. It's always tricksy when you're coming out of woodland into an open field, an open space. All the colour settings and colour temperature and your lighting settings go completely to pot. So sorry about that. Yeah, as I was saying, I diverted away from the Cotswold Way. I hadn't realised. I think I was doing a piece to camera, completely didn't see the sign and diverted away from it. I'm outside the Postlip Hall at the moment, and I'll explain more about that later on. I'll drop it in here so it appears in the right order. So this is Postlip Hall, and just through it, framed there between the two copper beech trees. In front of that, and just to the side, is a tithe barn which dates to the 14th century. Now, Postlip Hall started being built in the 16th century. Much of it is from the 17th. It's got lots of Jacobean features inside, and it also has ornate carvings on the ceilings. Unfortunately, it's not open to the public. It is, however, home to a community of families. I think it's 8 families. They all buy a share or a unit in the property, and they live together as a community. They farm on the land hereabouts, so it's a sustainable lifestyle. They're growing their own food, crops. I think they also do their own education for the children as well, because it's also children that live here. So it's an interesting concept. I'll drop the links in below to tell you more about life here at Postlip Hall. But yeah, fantastic piece of architecture here in the Cotswolds. So we're now in Briarwood. Just the other side of Briarwood is a plantation, conifer plantation, which we'll look at in more detail because of what's in there. And also there's also a quarry here called Woodpecker's Quarry. I'm not sure if it's still in use, but as I was approaching the wood, I did notice, or hear should I say, lots of activity going on, so it may still be an active quarry, but it's not actually on the Cotswold Way, and we've seen quarries, so I'm not going to do a diversion for that today. Our first steep section of the day. It's a little bit slippery, so I'm going to have to be sorry if I'm looking down and not at the camera. I don't want to go backwards. Yeah, our first steep section of the day. In actual fact, because I'm filming, I've just let some walkers pass in front of me. And I just noticed that this section is a lot busier than the section we did on day 6. I'm not sure if it's because it's close to the town of Winchcombe and there are more attractions en route, like the castle and what we're about to see next. That could explain it, as the section from Dowdeswell to Cleeve Common, there isn't a lot in terms of villages or interest, but I certainly found that interesting in terms of the nature aspect of it. But maybe not everybody's into that kind of thing, so it doesn't appeal to so many walkers. Popular and very busy section here, but good to see people out and about. Obviously it's what you expect in mid-July that we're in now, and obviously with the schools breaking up soon it's likely to be quite a bit busier, but this isn't really a national trail, isn't really one that children would go on. Obviously if you decide to do the Cotswold Way in the winter time, it has advantages and disadvantages. Obviously the main advantage it being much quieter than it is here currently. The two disadvantages, of course, the weather, the cold, and well, the cold, yes and no. I mean, if it's obviously very, very adverse, but obviously if it's just ordinary sort of winter cold, you can wrap up against that. You can also wrap up against it. Rain. Biggest problem, of course, is mud. If you have a lot of rain, mud is a tremendous problem. The other difficulty in the winter time walking is the lack of light. This time of year is fantastic, so I've left home at a reasonable time, and I've got here for a 9 o'clock start. So I've got a good day's walking right into the evening, so I can have a good explore around Winchcombe, add on a little vlog before I need to walk back. So I can work right through till 8 o'clock, which is great. And obviously in the winter time you're going to lose at least 4 hours. You can take 4 hours off that, and possibly an hour in the morning as well. So taking between summer and winter, I think I'm going to go with the summer. This woodland here is perhaps the biggest section we've come across since walking through Whitcombe Wood on the approach to where was it, Birdlip. That was a heavy section. Sorry, it's a little dark. I'm not quite sure why it's gone a little bit dark. I apologise for that. But yeah, bear with me. I hope you can see me a bit clearer now. Yeah, I can see what happened now. I thought, why is it going so dark? What I do when I'm recording video, I keep it on a fixed, sorry for technical details, I hope this doesn't bore you too much. Keep it on a fixed 1/50th shutter, because I shoot at 25 frames per second, so it avoids any slight jitterness in the shots, so hopefully it looks a little bit smoother. But if you do that, of course you need to compensate for changing light levels, and what I do is I just shove the old ISO onto auto, and it flipped out of auto and gone into a fixed setting, hence why it was dark. So sorry about that. I set out today and looked at the map, and I could see Winchcombe in the distance. When we set off I thought, well, it's going to be a much easier walk today. Oh boy, I was wrong. Now on paper Winchcombe is only 2.5 miles from the car park by the golf club on Cleeve Hill. But I've just come up through the wood, just exited the wood, should I say. Very, very steep climb. So be prepared for that, and this route is a lot more challenging than what I thought. I do apologise if the microphone starts to crackle and hum again. We're about to go under those dreaded pylons. They seem to be following us. Some of you may know, if you've been following my channel for a while now, that I say a while, haven't been going that long. Yeah, if you've been following me for a while, that I do occasionally touch on my autism and disability in general. And it's just something I just wanted to mention, really. It was something you need to get off my chest. I do quite like, I'm no interested in football, so if you don't like football, don't worry, I'm not going to be mentioning football. That's the last time I say that word. I do, however, like a bit of tennis. So I was watching Wimbledon, and I quite like watching some of the lesser events. I mean, I find it all exciting. It's all pretty good stuff. Particularly enjoy mixed doubles. But on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, might have been Sunday. Yeah, probably Sunday actually. Come to think about it, I was watching the old finals there, and obviously you had the men's singles final. There's that pylon again, getting in the shot. Men's singles final. I hope it's not destroying the sound too much. And I flipped over on the old red button. You can flip between different courts, which is great. So if you get a quiet bit, or taking a break, or even you get bored with the match, you can flip over and watch one of the many other courts taking place. And one of the other events taking place was the men's wheelchair final. And I watched some of that. It was a very impressive match. However, two things really, really depressed me about it. One was the lack of the crowd. Obviously, all the other final matches, the boys' juniors, all of the doubles matches and the single matches, they were pretty much packed to capacity. The wheelchair finals, however, I didn't see the ladies' wheelchair final, or indeed the doubles wheelchairs, but the men's final of the wheelchair, there was hardly anyone watching it at all in the crowd. And the most depressing thing of all was at the very end. Obviously the guy, I've forgotten the gentleman's name who won. I think he may have been Croatian. I may have got that wrong. I'll drop his name and the country in. He was obviously elated, quite emotional, and then obviously he got presented with a cup for winning the title, and obviously he was deservedly so. There was no photographers there. All of the other final matches, all of them, there was loads of press photographers, obviously TV cameras there, press photographers there with their long telephoto lenses and everything, and lots of people excited. This poor guy, he had to have his photograph taken of him winning the cup, taken on his own mobile phone. There were no photographers, no official Wimbledon photographers I could see around, but there certainly wasn't any other people around at all. I mean, you're looking at, there was probably about a dozen people in the crowd. No real elation. There was, I think it sounded like about 3 people clapping, and it was really quite depressing seeing that, because the wheelchair contestants at Wimbledon, they put as just much of effort in as their able-bodied counterparts, if not possibly more so. And I find that really sad, and it's kind of quite a statement that in general that disabled people just get constantly ignored and shunned and pushed aside. But anyway, well done for the guy for winning, and so apologies I've forgotten your name, but I will drop it in here. You get the feel it's gained quite some height after exiting that woodland. It's open territory around us. We're now in a country lane. I don't think it's used that much. But it's nice and wide, so it's very pleasant. We've got really, really nice hedgerows here. I'm not sure what height this is. I'll look at the map and look at the contours and drop that in to see where we are. But we've climbed considerably. We dropped down as we came off Cleeve Common, then we dropped down a bit as we crossed over the river that I've just forgotten its name of, the one that flows into the River Chelt. And then we've now climbed up, as I say, quite some height. It was quite a testing stretch, that bit in the woodland. It goes up a zigzag, and I think in the winter when it's wet that would be quite a difficult one. Worth mentioning at this point that from Winchcombe to Cleeve Common there are some alternative routes. You don't have to take this one. There is an official alternative one. But it's basically to bypass the farms in the area, because obviously some farms have cows, and obviously again in the winter the farmyard would be incredibly muddy and dirty. There is a way round that one, and it is marked. I know the Cicerone guide that I use It marks those alternative routes in blue, so it's got the Cotswold Way marked clearly in red and the alternative routes you can take marked in blue. There is another big alternative route which we're going to do both. It's exciting because I can go in there and back on when I start heading south. When I leave Far West Strip Farm, I'll be going up to the top of Froster Hill, Coley Peak. That'll be our first section, but when I head back I'll actually do the full loop, so it'll be a full Cotswold Way loop rather than just heading south on that first day going south, and that will actually cover the canal, the Stroudwater Canal, which I have mentioned before and have indeed done a vlog on it so far. But yeah, there are alternative routes. There are other paths that crisscross this one. If you don't particularly like this section, you can avoid that woodland section. Yeah, it is a nice woodland section, but it's no different to any of the others. So if you want to avoid the steepness, then you can find a way around it. There in front of us lies our next destination. I'm actually going to stop there for a coffee and a sandwich. It's Belas, Knap, Long Barrow. So here we are at Belas, Knap, Long Barrow, part of the 7 Cotswold series of Long Barrows. Behind me would have been the original entrance to the tomb, which was excavated in 1863. When they first excavated the Long Barrow in 1863, they uncovered the skeletons of 5 children and 1 adult. So who lived here and when? Well, it goes back to 3,000 and 4,000 years BC, and the Neolithic people would have lived here, and obviously this is what they did when people died. This was their burial chamber, this was their equivalent of the churchyard, the graveyard. The Saxons also lived here as well, and there was some evidence of Roman coins and pottery had been found in the area, so they obviously probably had settlements hereabouts, but there's no evidence that they actually used the Long Barrow itself for any form of civilization. But an amazing place, and well worth exploring if you're in the area. Obviously you'll see it if you're coming along to do the Cotswold Way. Our first glimpse of Sudeley Castle. We're coming back via a slightly different route, and we'll be passing much closer to Sudeley Castle, and I'll talk more about that then. Our descent to Winchcombe is very fine walking country indeed, absolutely glorious here, out in the open, but views stretching around in all directions back towards Cleeve Common, and head to where we're going. The ridge heads towards direction of Broadway. Can't quite see Broadway Tower yet, but it will become more visible as we head further north. Just seen a note on the fence saying please don't take shortcuts, and first I was a little bit puzzled as to what it's meant, but now I've come to this corner of the field I can see why. That's the footpath that we've come down, and it heads in this direction and loops around here, edging the side of this wood, and heads down there. So some people could be tempted to cut across the field diagonally to cut out that, which of course destroys the crops and the field It's obviously grassland planted for the sheep at the moment, but it does disrupt the sheep, and obviously if any walkers have dogs with them, then it could be serious. And obviously I'm sure I don't need to tell my followers of my channel that you please make sure that you've always got a dog on a lead when you're taking it through animals, because there's been a spate of sheep being attacked by dogs. But enough of that, we're heading down into this wood and we'll be soon reaching the town of Winchcombe. You can see from that shot just how close Sudeley Castle is indeed to Winchcombe, and what an influence Sudeley Castle has had on the town. The first influence on the town of Winchcombe was the abbey, and it was a really important abbey. Got a spot on my lens, bear with me. You could say that Winchcombe has been influenced initially by religious orders and powers from the abbey. And once the abbey was dissolved, I believe it was the 17th century, I will put the exact date on the subtitle, it then became involved with royalist matters from Sudeley Castle, and Sudeley has got many strong connections to our royal traditions and heritage over the years. Just coming into Winchcombe now, fantastic view of the church. Yeah, it's really thick grass here, and it is quite quite dense. So I'm glad I've got my socks above my trousers for to stop the old ticks. But yeah, this is just see if I can pan that around so we can get a shot of the church. Now made a detour away from Winchcombe, and we've come to Sudeley Castle, which is just 3/4 of a mile away from the town centre. It's actually on an alternative route of the Cotswold Way. Remember I mentioned the blue route? Well, it's on a blue route, back or forwards, depending which way you're coming from, Jim Camden or Bath, back in the direction of Cleeve Cloud. The castle is closed at the moment. I'm going to drive around and get some shots of the castle a bit closer. We're in the grounds here, and just to note that the grounds are free to come into. There is a lake, beautiful parkland here, and you don't have to pay to come into the parkland to walk around the grounds itself. Obviously if you want to look at the formal gardens and to go inside the castle itself, then obviously you do need to pay. But yeah, it's free to come out. I'm in the gardens at the moment, and it's just coming up to 5 o'clock, so they are getting ready to close now. But I'm here, okay, to carry on filming. It's nice and quiet here in the beautiful parkland. But as I say, I'll get some shots up a bit closer to the castle in a bit. So if I got some photos, I'll drop them in round about now. If not, they'll be tagged on later on. What I wanted to do though was just to tell you a little bit about the castle, because it fits in very closely with the history of Winchcombe. And my old guidebook, Richard Sale's got quite a bit to say about Sudeley Castle, so I'm just going to share with you a little bit about that now, just to tell you a bit of history about what happened here and how it's got its name. First of all, that's the most important thing. How did it get its name, Sudeley Castle? So I'll just read from a little bit from the book here. It means the south clearing, which kind of makes sense because it's just south of the old town here, and there's a clearing away from the woodlands. Now bearing in mind that in Saxon times, there would be a lot more woodland around Winchcombe than there is now. Obviously there are some woods around Winchcombe, but a lot of it's been cleared for farming. That would have been the case in Saxon time, so this was the clearing here. Although in Saxon time there wasn't actually a castle here, just an estate, and the reason it was important is because it was prized for its deer. At the time of the Norman conquest, the estate was held by a great-grandson of King Ethelred the Unready. The first castle was built illegally during the wars between Stephen and Matilda, as there were many others in that confused time. In the mid-14th century it came into the hands of the Bottelier family. The most famous of this line, Ralph Bottelier, campaigned in France with Henry V and Henry VI and could claim to have seen Joan of Arc die at the stake. Ralph was made Baron Sudeley for his services as Lord Chamberlain, and he rebuilt the castle, the resulting building being so magnificent that it aroused both admiration and envy. Much of what remains today is Bottelier's works, including St Mary's Chapel, the banqueting hall, the tithe barn and the Portmore Tower. The tower is believed to have been named after a French admiral whose ransom, with other spoils of war, helped finance the building. Ralph chose the wrong side in the War of the Roses, and the castle was confiscated by Henry IV. It later had numerous owners who witnessed at first hand the founding of the Tudor dynasty. Catherine of Aragon stayed here, and Anne Boleyn spent a week here with Henry VIII in their happier times. Each of these queens was to produce a daughter who remembered Sudeley. The third of Henry's queen, Jane Seymour, had a brother, Thomas Seymour, who became Lord Sudeley and lit the fuse for the spectacular Tudor drama enacted around the castle. In 1543, Thomas attempted to marry Catherine Parr, but was thwarted by a marriage to the king. Following Henry's death in 1547, Seymour, by then Lord High Admiral, did marry Catherine, the king's widow, intending to use her as a stepping stone in his aim of becoming Lord Proctor of the young Henry VI. He also tried to seduce the 15-year-old Princess Elizabeth, who, at one time, lived at Sudeley with them. There is an interesting Gloucestershire legend regarding this day as of Elizabeth's. It is said that she died at Sudeley and that the scheming Seymour replaced her by a boy from a local village. The legend persisted, being used to explain the Queen's spinsterhood and masculine habits, but although the young princess did not in fact die, Catherine Parr did of a puerperal fever a week after the birth of Seymour's daughter, Mary. Thomas Seaver eventually outreached himself, and his attempt to improve his position by marrying Lady Jane Grey to Edward VI failed. He was executed, as was his niece, when Mary became queen. His lands, including Sudeley, were confiscated, and of his young daughter nothing more is known. Queen Elizabeth I visited the castle several times in her reign, and Sudeley enjoyed a period of peace which was destroyed by the English Civil War. By then the castle was in the hands of Lord Chandos, a royalist supporter. It was taken by Colonel Massey's parliamentary forces in early 1643 and used as a billet. During this time the soldiers looted the castle and desecrated the chapel. They tore down Catherine Parr's tomb and threw her lead coffin into the gardens, a Puritan gesture towards what they regarded as a superstitious and idolatrous customs. There are other acts of vandalism. An account printed in 1685 speaks of the carcasses of slaughtered animals being hung from the pulpit and the use of the altar as a chopping board. The nave was full of the entrails of butchered animals, and the dug-up bodies of the dead and the far corners of the church were used as makeshift toilets. The castle changed hands several times. In 1643 King Charles stayed here following the raising of the siege of Gloucester, which we looked at in our very first vlog when we saw the stone above Gloucester, and wrote a letter to the county of Cornwall expressing his regret at the death of Sir Bever Granville at the Battle of Lansdowne. Finally, Chandos surrendered to Parliament, paying a fine for the privilege of keeping his land, although he had to agree to the slighting of the castle. The castle was in a poor state after the war and continued to decay. Becoming an inn in the mid-18th century, later it was used by tenant farmers, one of whom discovered Catherine Parr's coffin in 1782. He opened it and the body was found to be in a near-perfect state of preservation. Over the succeeding years it was opened often, and parts of the contents, including a large part of the hair, were stolen for personal collections. Eventually in 1817 The body was at last reburied. Shortly after this, Sudeley was brought by the Dent brothers, who restored the castle and chapel and erected a marble tomb for the remains of Queen Catherine. Sudeley Castle is still in the hands of the Dent family, who over the last 150 years have contributed much to Winchcombe and the surrounding area. The house and gardens have been extensively renovated and now represent one of the best examples of the early fortified mansion in this country. Welcome to Winchcombe. As you can see, we've got the splendid church behind me. And just tell you a little bit about Winchcombe's history, going into Richard Sale's book. I can't remember all of it. There's so much stuff about this fabulous town in the Cotswolds. You really need to visit yourself if you can. Just give you a little bit of a taster. The name Winchcombe is derived from Saxon Winselcombe, the valley with a bend. The church opposite was built in perpendicular style around 1470, though the site is an ancient one. The exterior of the church is of considerable interest. In fact, the main point of interest is the 40 gargoyles which are dotted around the church, and I'll try and grab some of those with my telephoto lens and insert them around about now. They're called the Winchcombe Worthies. It may be in view of the troubles between the town and abbey that the gargoyles represent unpopular members of the monastic order. Inside the church are numerous interesting relics. 2 stone coffins from the abbey site have already been noted. The most interesting and certainly the rarest relic is the altar cloth, which is framed on the north wall. Beautiful evening here in Winchcombe, so why not join me on an evening stroll around this beautiful town. Now, I'm actually at the rear of the town's primary school at the moment, which is called the Abbey Primary School, which gives an indication of what it was built on, or the site of. So we're at the rear of the church here. So this is the churchyard, St Peter's Church. I've taken some photographs inside and did a piece to camera earlier on, telling you about that. So now it's the evening, and just having a closer look at this area. If you just make out, that's the playground there, you'll see a raised area along there by the trees. There's those 2 trees there where I did the piece of camera earlier. Now, I'm not sure for certain. I know this was the location of where the abbey was, and it is marked on the OS map as being earthworks. Now, whether that is directly related to the abbey, I'm not 100% certain, whether it's to do with another building or perhaps an earlier building. The gentleman in the church said that there were remains of walls around. I haven't found them as yet, but we'll have a little explore, see if we can find anything of the abbey that still remains here in Winchcombe, and then we'll have a look up and down the main streets as well. Beautiful almshouses behind me were built by Emma Dent from Sudeley Castle, and she employed the architect Sir George Gilbert Scott, and it was designed to help improve relations between the town of Sudeley Castle and the town of Winchcombe. The lane behind me is called Cowell Lane, and it forms the eastern boundary of where the abbey once stood. do come to Winchcombe, and I thoroughly recommend that you do, it's worth trying to explore the town in the early morning or the late evening, when I think it's at its best. You've got golden rays of light. It's a nice evening. It's also much quieter, free of traffic and people. You can really appreciate the buildings and all the history that lies around you in this fantastic town here in the Cotswolds. Well, I hope you enjoyed the vlog today. The tour on the Cotswold Way, part 7 from Cleeve Cloud to here in Winchcombe, and the evening tour I did. What I particularly enjoyed and always fascinates me is the amount of history. Obviously we started off at Belas, Knap, going back to 3000, 4000 BC, so we're looking about 6,000 years ago. Incredible amount of history there. Here we've come to Saxon Town here in Winchcombe, and also the association close by of the Sudeley Castle and all of the connections that's got with the royal lineage, which is a massive history marker. Through all of the kings and queens we had connections to Henry VIII, didn't we, and Elizabeth I. Some of Henry VIII's wives as well had connections to Sudeley Castle. Absolutely amazing. Also the architecture here in Winchcombe is really breathtaking. So that's it for this particular tour of the Cotswold Way. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider a like, subscribe, perhaps a share or a comment below. Really appreciate it if you could do that. Until next time, the next walk will be number 8, Cotswold Way. From starting in Winchcombe, we'll be heading up to Hales Abbey. I'm not quite sure what the destination point will be. Probably be a little bit beyond Hales. Yet to work that one out. But anyway, next time, if you hit the bell icon after subscribe, YouTube will notify you when that next one uploads. Until then, all the best, take care, and hope to see you all soon. Cheers, bye bye for now.